what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Lifeonaire Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo on the Lifeonaire Show. In case this is your first episode, here's what we do. We help you make more, work less, and create a life and business you love. I am joined by my Polish co-host, Polish Peter.
Hey, man. So I'm excited about this episode because we're going to be talking about, guess what? How we complexify life and how we can uncomplexify that life.
You stole my word, man. Okay.
No, but seriously, this is a really great story couple that I love dearly. I mean, they're such an amazing people.
Yeah.
And, they came into Lifeonaire with a very typical story of real estate journeys that we see all over the place.
Yeah. Well, and listen, if you're not a real estate person, you're still going to pull some huge lessons out of this. This is Steve, Laura Halverson are extraordinary people, but they're also regular people too. And what that means is like they found themselves on a path that did not make sense for what they really, really valued and found most important. Just like perhaps maybe, you're in a position like that right now. And so they're going to share some really valuable lessons on what happened to them, how it kind of snuck up on them, and the things and the changes they made to get back on track. You're going to love it. Let's go right now to our interview with Steve and Laura. Steve and Laura, what's up, guys? I'm so excited to do this interview. Thanks for joining us in the Lifeonaire Show.
Thanks for having us. It's great to be here. Can't wait to share our story and see if there's something that we can help somebody else with.
Man, I know you will, and I know our audience will absolutely love your story. So just for our listeners, to give you some context, Steve and Laura, how long ago was it that we met, guys? Like 4 years, maybe?
5 years ago, 2016. Mm-hmm.
Hey, time flies when you're having fun, right? I guess, yeah.
It sure does.
So you guys are some of my favorite people in the world. I love not only the dynamic between you two, which is hilarious, and I love the how you guys go back and forth, but more importantly, like it's been so cool to see this journey that you guys have gone through. And quite frankly, like we're going to get into this in a second, but by worldly standards, when you guys first came to Lifeonaire, if you looked on the surface, you guys were successful. Like you had 84 doors. Is that right?
Yep. 84.
Now, and we'll talk about that number a little bit later. But bring our audience up to speed on, first of all, how you guys met. I know, the Landlord Association, what your plan was for success and how things like progressed. And then I'll just kind of interject and we'll talk.
I'm going to start.
Go ahead.
Steve and I met at the Fox Valley Apartment Association. So we each had rentals, and somehow throughout the course of time, we must have read some book that if we had 100 doors, we would have freedom. And what we recognized is the closer we got to that number, the less freedom we had. When we first got together, we had tons of fun. He's the fun guy, so I'll let him talk about that.
Fun guy as in like amoeba fungi, like
what? Fungus type of stuff.
Like on the backside of trees. Okay.
Right. No, when we first got together, we had all the time in the world because we weren't consumed by all of the time that, our business ended up taking because we weren't there yet. So going out every weekend, whether we were camping 4-wheeling, out on my motorcycle, which was just, that was my pride and joy. Everything revolved around being out on the Harley and, taking in the scenery. Just yesterday, we went out for a ride, looking at the Wisconsin colors that are changing right now. And it was just, times were just so much easier because we had all that extra time, freedom to do all those type of things.
Now, how many properties? So you guys, I'm imagining this in my mind, what this might look like. So Steve's like, she's pretty cute. She's in the business too, and she has rentals.
No, he was like, you know what? Why don't we take your apartments and my apartments and come together, right?
It was the rental property Brady Bunch, is what I heard. Like it's the rental property Brady Bunch.
And the truth is, I think he wanted to get together with me because he needed some help with some paperwork.
That's what it is.
Okay,
administrative stuff.
Maybe some truth to that.
That wasn't my department. I actually called her. I said, "Hey, could I stop over and could you help me with some paperwork?" And I literally walked in with a laundry basket full of unopened mail.
And she didn't kick you out. Wow.
Things.
So he's looking for a VA.
Right.
Now, and so to be fair, Laura's probably like, this guy looks pretty handy. He may have some benefit to my rental. And so this is a synergistic relationship built in heaven, clearly. And so So how many, and just when you guys started off, like when you guys first met, how many properties did you have? Just out of curiosity, combined maybe.
I had 2 houses and a 7-unit apartment building.
Okay.
I think I had a triplex and three or four single
houses.
families.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. And so you guys went from essentially what it sounds like is like maybe a dozen doors ish, somewhere around there, to you scaled to 84 together. And so you guys were on this path, you meet each other, and then what happened? Like, were you guys just, you had to sit down and you're like, hey, like, I think, we should get more properties and let's like kind of work together in the business. And like, how did that evolve?
I don't even know if there really was a plan. We just knew that 100 doors was kind of the thing. And I don't even know if that was really verbally said to each other. We just started growing. It was just one after another. And it was the thrill of the kill is what it calls it.
Mm-hmm.
And, just finding that next deal. And I don't know if there was really any other metric to it other than 100 units.
Mm-hmm.
And so was that so Laura, you're a numbers person. You're like, your spreadsheets have spreadsheets most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And did you actually do any calculations to choose that 100, or did it just sound cool? It sounds sexy. It sounds like, wow, this is like, we have 100 doors. We're making it. Like, what was behind that number?
I did very little tracking of any metrics or anything like that until I got into Lifeonaire and was working with my coach to better understand our business. It was just really the goal of 100 doors should bring us freedom.
Okay. And so the first time, and listen, I think that's a very, very common scenario, right? Where you just, maybe you read a certain book that maybe we shouldn't name it to avoid lawsuits, but you just think that it's this passive income is going to fuel your lifestyle and life's going to be great and you can retire on a beach somewhere. And I'll tell you your story. Now you know this as well, because you see it all over Lifeonaire too. People come in with this kind of this theory or this kind of way.
Dream.
This model, and it doesn't really work. And so you guys first came to Lifeonaire. Tell me about how you guys first got exposed and what actually made you decide to come to the Get a Life event. And I think it was Steve, or was it you, Laura?
Well, you were at our local RIA. And
Laura always went to the RIAs, and I'm like, yeah, it's just a meeting. I wasn't going to go. And she's like, oh, this one looks a little bit different. Let's, come and check it out.
So we went to the RIA, and then we signed up to do the 3-day, and we did it in Chicago with you in 2016.
Okay. Yes, Chicago. And then, so what was that message like for you? Like when it probably flew in the face and contradicted quite strongly what you guys had been on in the path you've been pursuing. What was that like?
Well, one of the first things that was mentioned at the event that we were at was just consider the fact that there might be another way. And that was just an eye-opening revelation right there. It's like, well, all right, maybe there's people that have done this before that are doing it better. We thought we were doing it well. Obviously, I don't even know that I don't know that we knew that we were doing it wrong until we saw there was a right way or a better way.
I just knew that what we were doing was causing a lot of stress. Kind of our financial picture when we came to Lifeonaire in 2016 was not good. And it put a lot of stress on us, and just our family suffered because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that actually mean? Like, you had 84 doors when you went at the event, right? You said stress. How many hours were you guys working?
How many hours are there in a day?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were working a lot. And not only did we have the rental business, but I also worked full-time at a job that was pretty demanding in terms of hours. And I had a long commute. So a lot of that stuff changed throughout the years too.
I also had a trade business that I was doing, not trade, but a mechanical insulation business. So I was in the trades. So between juggling that, her juggling her W-2, and then working on the rentals as well, her nights and weekends, it was all just sitting in the office. So she gets done, working W-2 all day, come home, sit in the office till midnight, and it was just go time. And that's just the life that we got used to. And
it didn't start out like that right away, but because things were smaller and more manageable. we always talk about what is it easier to take care of, fewer items or more items. So we certainly, as we grew the business, it got more difficult to take care of it and do everything that needed to be done. And then the business was in such a bad situation. We had nearly $5 million worth of debt, and I had to go to work every day to pay the bills because we had about negative $10,000 a month cash flow. And we didn't have money to hire people to help us. In hindsight, if we would have hired people sooner, things wouldn't have been sitting there empty so long. We had like 16.5% vacancy on very leveraged properties. So
we're
Wow.
certainly living in a scarcity mindset because everything was tight. On paper we were rich, but in real life it's like, show me the money. Where is it?
Right. Well, and speaking of vacancies, I remember kind of funny story, Peter. When I sat down with Steve and Laura, they gave me a number of rentals they had, which actually was inaccurate because they'd forgotten all the ones they had. And I asked, I think it went something like this. I said, so have you been collecting rent on that? And Laura's like, well, what do you think? And so
I have one more question before we move on. Because you went from that many doors when you guys met to 84 doors. And did it seem like this just sneaked in? Meaning like when you guys had to take care of it and the stress and working till midnight and all this, does it seem like that life kind of just sneaks in? You know what I mean? Like it's not very like all of a sudden you're thinking, wow, I am working that many hours and this is just how it is. Or is it slowly kind of?
It's a slow transition. It took a while to build up to those doors, and things worked well until they didn't. This is an example of how I would look for houses to buy. I remember one time Steve needed a truck. I had my realtor's license, so I went on the MLS and I found the house that I could buy and get the most cash back at closing because we had a relationship with a lender. We could get cash back at closing. So I bought a house so he could get a truck. So it, like I said, it worked well until it didn't.
So what do you guys say? Like, so someone listening right now may have a similar goal, like, to just be a tycoon in real estate and own the monopoly game. And they may be thinking right now, well, I can do it better than them and I won't have those same challenges. What do you think, or what would your advice be to someone like that?
First off, I think they could do it better than us because the information that is out there now, I think that if somebody really read into it, they could do it better. But I think overall, it's just a matter of less is more. That really is what it comes down to. I know that we talk about the Mexican fisherman story, and not to give the story away, but starting out just kind of not a minimalist, but having what you need and growing this great big corporation to finally come back to having what you need. And it's like, why did we go through that great big circle to come back to not where we were? We're certainly in a much better spot, but if we would have just done things correctly from the start, but we didn't necessarily know what correctly was. We
did as good as what we could with the information we had. And now that Lifeonaire has introduced us to new information and better planning, we've done better. Just kind of changed our course of direction, and we're now enjoying, kind of reaping the rewards of the hard work we had. But I'm sure somebody could do it better and not take the sacrifices that our family had to take because of it. I remember lots of disappointment for our daughters when, Steve would not be able to make a swim meet because somebody's needed a new water heater to replace the toilet or something like that. They just kept hearing that they weren't as important as the tenants. So
it was story after story like that. It was, whether it was, a toilet or turning over an apartment, but it was just, I'm sorry, I can't make it to your swim meet. And it sucked. I think, and I hope that our kids have forgiven us for that, and that they see the changes that have been made since then. I don't know. It was a horrible time.
Yeah. Last week at our retreat, we had a conversation about 18 summers, how parents are only afforded 18 summers to spend time with their kids, and you can't get that time back. So set your priorities right and do a better job structuring your business than what we did when you only have that limited time with your kids.
Right. And it sounds like your kids is a huge motivator for you guys and that time, but also your time together as a couple, I'm sure, was compromised significantly too.
It was. And I know you hear the cliche of, we're doing it all for the family. We're doing it for the kids. Mm-hmm. And we can say that all we want, but bottom line, the proof wasn't in that pudding. Mm-hmm. We certainly weren't showing that's what it was all about.
Talking about not good for the kids and not good for us, when I was under all of that stress, like trying to figure out how I'm going to pay bills with all of those vacancies and $10,000 a month negative cash flow, working lots of hours at my W-2 job, coming home nights and weekends, taking vacation days to do paperwork because I didn't think I could afford to hire people to help us. I wasn't a very pleasant person.
Honey, that's so not true.
So, our relationship struggled because of that too. So I'm happy to report that I'm more pleasant now.
Frequent date nights, and it's just, we are in a
completely different place, and it's
awesome.
It's crazy. I do tell our story to a lot of people because I'm so grateful for the life we got back after joining Lifeonaire. And in 2016, if I would have said all of these things that were going to change from then until now, I would have said it was impossible. And the truth is, nothing is impossible if you set your mind to it and work towards your goals.
That's awesome. You guys, and I know, it's awesome to hear and see the change, but you guys did the work. You guys made the hard choices, put in the effort, created the vision. You implemented the things that you learned. And so that's really what made the difference here. Speaking of which, what are some of the things from a business perspective, and we don't have to go into detail here, but some of the high level items that you guys did in the business to start getting a grasp on it, to start getting back to life and start to reprioritize things?
Well, something that I pushed because I didn't think I could afford it. A suggestion from our mastermind group was to hire an employee to help Steve work through all of these properties so we didn't have 16.5% vacancy. And then all I saw was, oh my goodness, not only do I have to pay all of our bills, but now I have to come up with money to pay this employee.
Right.
So I pushed that for a while. And the truth is,
you push back on that.
Yeah. I pushed back on that. And the truth is, if we would have hired somebody a lot sooner, we wouldn't have had all of that backlog for Steve. So I wish I would have done that sooner. That was a big, important step. Obviously, getting rid of the vacancy.
Can I pause you for a second, Laura?
Mm-hmm.
When you guys had that level of vacancy, was that because, and I'm reading between the lines here, is because Steve wasn't able to, was it because you weren't able to do the paperwork and follow up with collections? Was it because Steve couldn't get to the property to fix it and renovate it and get it ready for the next rental? Like, what were the things that contributed to that high vacancy rate?
Yes, and yes. It was a combination.
A lot of things.
Okay.
Like, people would move out and then he wouldn't have time to go get it ready for a new tenant because maybe he was working on something else. There was a point in time when we were buying about a house a month. And that's a lot, especially with him doing all of the work.
I know we've kind of said in the past that a lot of people, there's many people that they have a hard time just managing their own property. And here we were just two people managing 84 or 6 or 9 or whatever it was 84. We had.
Yeah. Steve doesn't even know. He's like, a lot.
That's my department.
Right.
What's that address? Who lives there? Oh, there we go.
So, okay. And so you hired somebody. What other things did you do or maybe even whether it's a thing you did or a change in your perception, like you mentioned, less is more. Like what are some of the other things people can take away that maybe they don't have 84 doors, but maybe there's something going on in their business they could extract a lesson from what you guys went through and did.
Well, then in addition to getting rid of the vacancy, we also decided to start selling property. And as you can imagine, because our goal was 100 equaled freedom, we were slow with that too.
Right. And that was a struggle in itself. It's like, but I've only got 16 more to go. I'm almost there. And it was kind of thrown back at us like, well, how's that working for you? Like,
so what was that like? Because I know, Laura, you didn't say this directly, but I know, we've been in the mastermind together. You kind of had this goal, and maybe there was some element or degree of identity that was wrapped around the successful attainment of that goal. And did you feel like you were giving up, or you were throwing in the towel, or like, what was that like? Why did it take so long to start to turn that boat?
I remember, actually, it was our first retreat after we joined Lifeonaire, and the conversation about basically your equity doesn't do anything. I remember actually sitting at the campfire. Lots of good things happen in the room, but lots of good things happen when we're all together. And
meeting after the meeting.
Yes, the meeting after the meeting. I remember somebody told me, Ken Holmes, as a matter of fact, he said, I know what you can do with your equity. And my eyes sparked up like, what can I do with my equity? And his story went something like this. You can take your equity and $1.59 down to the drugstore and get yourself a Coke. So his point was you couldn't do anything with your equity. So I recognized that. And then in January 2017, we listed our first house because our plan was going to be to, as Ken said, get rid of the old dogs and use that equity to pay down debt. So we started that in January 2017 by listing the house we thought we had the most equity in. Shortly after we listed it, somebody offered us $30,000 less than what we had it listed for, which was heart-wrenching. It sat on the market for
keep in mind, that's the way we used to buy them, though.
Yeah. But I certainly didn't want to sell that way. It sat on the market for an entire year, vacant, because I had signed a 1-year contract as a listing. Learned that lesson. I'll never do that again either. But so we weren't collecting any rent. That made our situation even worse. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I did all of this for nothing. That was hard. That was really hard. And I'm happy to report we didn't do all of it for nothing. It just took lots of redirecting the course. But the point was we had to sell some properties to use that equity to pay down other homes and make our debt more manageable.
I think one of the big ticket items that we did was we sold our own personal residence. Mm-hmm. It was our dream home, but the kids were gone. It was a great big house that just the two of us didn't need anymore. And once we got in the mindset that by selling this property, that would basically catapult us into the next step of freedom. It really did. We were able to pay off. What do we pay off in credit card debt just from that?
$289,000.
Wow.
So just to take that burden off of our back as well, and downsizing a home, and so many other blessings happen along the way. But just the fact of eliminating or selling our dream home, it was a struggle for us, but it was the path to financial freedom, and it's probably one of the best moves that we ever made because it really got us moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And also it sounds like maybe that dream home was. The dream had been corrupted in another area, so you weren't going to have the dream anyway, and so that no longer fit for what you guys were trying to accomplish. Can you give me
lots of other benefits from selling that house too? I used to say Steve had a hobby cutting grass. It would take him like 8 hours a week to cut our grass, and
it's a nice hobby.
I suppose maybe it was good for your mind sitting on the lawnmower. The other thing that was really great for me selling that house is I used to commute 1 hour and 12 minutes to and from work every day.
Each way?
Each way.
That's like an extra 2.5 hours a day.
Exactly. Yeah.
She did that for 16 years. And She's like, I think I've had enough of this drive. I'm like, all right. So we moved her closer to her employment, and we got another couple months, and we don't have to worry about that drive anyway. So,
So Peter, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I want a couple of questions because you did your plan, came into Lifeonaire, and somebody told you a new plan, right? So in the new plan, there was a whole bunch of hard decisions that you have to make, like selling the property, selling your own house, right? Letting go of some of these things. Steve, you're working on all your properties, and now somebody's telling you got to get an employee. So no more fixing the toilet kind of a thing. How do you make those choices? Like, what was the process? What I want to know, because a lot of people are thinking like, well, I mean, it's easier said than done, but how do you actually do it to make those hard decisions? What did you guys look for or focus on to be able to do that?
I think making what you're considering tough decisions gets easier. The pain, I guess I needed a change because pain in terms of the time I was taking doing these things, pain in terms of what it was doing to our family, pain in terms of what it was doing to stress. So I realized that the whole concept of consider there might be a better way or a different way. I guess I was up there with pain and ready to get rid of it.
I had never even really thought about having an employee. It was just like, okay, it is what it is. One after another, I'll get it done. But the pile of vacancies kept getting more. And Laura had a little bit of help in her office. She had some part-time help. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, how is it that you can have help in the office to get things going, but I'm still one guy out in the field? And, so just kind of getting through some of that mindset of that. But I was, open arms once we got our first employee that came in. Is like, hey, this is all right. We started banging through things and getting caught up and being able to move forward. So, and he's still with us today, and it's completely changed our life and set us up to have some freedoms that we never thought we could have had.
So give us a snapshot of what life looks like now, like, in terms of, you mentioned debt, Laura, and vacancies and cash flow, all those kinds of things for our listeners to kind of see where you guys have gotten to.
Sure. So like I said, we started out with 84 doors. We're down to 43 doors today. We started out with negative $10,000 a month cash flow. We've been able to get positive cash flow of $14,677 for September.
Wait, how many cents? You didn't tell me how many cents.
Yeah. That spreadsheet actually rounds to the wholest dollar. So,
and change that.
Yeah, about that number though. That doesn't all go to our bottom line because we do have employees that get paid out of that cash flow. Our vacancy that used to be at 16.5% is at 2.44%.
Wow.
Which house is the 0.44?
And the other word that I love to use now is eradicated. We eradicated over 52% of the debt we had on these rental properties. That's very freeing. I enjoy a mental peace I haven't had in years.
What is our debt pay down? What have we paid off since the beginning?
And we've been able to pay off $2,348,111.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like a whole bunch of houses.
Yeah.
We need some sort of virtual effect right now, Peter, where it's like an audience cheering. Like we need to start putting that in the podcast. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
The crowd goes wild.
Fireworks going off here.
Well, and so like, what is that? You mentioned to it, you alluded to this a second ago, Laura, like it's not only a mental and emotional piece that kind of has occurred, but also the time with Steve and everything else. Like, what does life look like now for you guys? And, not only like how you feel, but like between you two and with the kids.
Life is great. Something that I just experienced last weekend, we were at the 3-day Get a Life event and looking at my workbook from where I am now to the last time I took the class, November 2018, I think I've made amazing strides. In 2018, when I did the homework, I got so physically upset about things. One morning, Steve had to help me in the shower because I was just so dizzy, because I think of just the emotional stuff in my head. And reading, like, my obituary was pretty touching, like, for me, in terms of, in 2018, what my obituary said, if people couldn't lie about me, wasn't how I wanted to be remembered. So I was really grateful for that being pointed out and me being able to make changes. My obituary now, if somebody writes about me and they have to say the truth, I'm not hurt by what I hear. And I'm glad that Lifeonaire helped me change what I was doing and helped me to change the person I am, because stress can do a lot of things to you, and it made me not a very nice person. The other thing that it has helped me is I used to think certain things, very limiting beliefs. It helped stretch my mind and of what was possible. Actually, last fall, I gave my retirement notice at my W-2 job. And that is, talk about mental peace. I actually went into them. It kind of goes along the chart that you have, where your beliefs cause your actions and your behaviors, and you get certain actions. We have something like that at actually our employer. They brought in somebody to educate us on something. And I went into them and told them that I was retiring because I used to think I needed my job. Well, part of my exit strategy is I needed to put my W-2 income away for an entire year. So I got some evidence which changed my beliefs. So now I could actually leave. I used to think I needed insurance, and people in Lifeonaire have introduced me to non-traditional ways of getting insurance. So I didn't have that limiting belief anymore. I used to think I needed my pension, but the rates of return that I'm able to do with some of the joint venture we do with other Lifeonaires. So all of these things that I thought I needed because of my W-2 job, I found different evidence that I didn't. So I was able to change my beliefs. So
you're actually, now you choose to be there.
Yeah.
You don't have to be there.
So I gave my retirement notice, and they were pretty surprised. And they came back and said, a little Laura is better than no Laura at all, which was really good for my heart. And now I'm in the point of transitioning myself out of there. So, and that is a mental piece that you can't believe. The whole fact about thinking I had to be there versus now I choose to be there.
And I think there's more than just that. There's also just the identity part of it. So much of you identified yourself as who you were in that industry.
Yeah.
And just breaking away from some of those beliefs too.
Yeah. Just to, back to some of those human needs and everything we have, I realize that significance and importance. And I used to think that job gave that to me. And some folks helped me reframe things, that job didn't give me significance and importance. I gave that job significance and importance. So that was a good thing to reframe in my head too.
That's amazing. And how much are you working at that job now?
It's hard to get 20 hours a week in there. Fortunately, I have vacation that I'm able to take. So it's anywhere from 12 to maybe 16 hours a week on average is what I'm doing.
And remotely, but that would have been impossible.
Right. That's amazing. What a transition like this. And I know you guys are far from done. This probably will be another episode moving forward, but you guys have now even started to evolve your vision in a new direction as well that fits even closer to what you're doing. And I'm going to leave that teaser out there right now for the next one. But one thing I just want to ask, what are some of the things, and we got to wrap up here in a couple of seconds, like what are some of the things you'd tell other people now? Like what are the biggest takeaways that you share with people that you want, how you could encourage them maybe, or show them that there's a different way than what they think?
There's a lot of them. It's you get us talking about it, and it just keeps on going and going and going. And people are like, "Oh, are they about done with this?" But it's just we're so we're grateful and thankful for Lifeonaire for what it's done for us, and to be able to try to share what we've experienced and how we've changed with other people. I don't know that there is just one thing. It's just less is more. There's maybe another way of doing things.
As I run into different people, recently we sold a 7-unit apartment building we had, and as I run into people who are looking to get into this industry and grow their portfolio and everything, I tell them about Lifeonaire and ask them to come hear some more, because I don't want people to experience the pain that we went through, because there is a better way.
Well, you guys are. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
What you were saying about selling that 7-unit, somebody just cold called us about buying it. Saw our number up on the sign for rent, cold called us on it. And the more he was talking, we could just be like, or listen, it's like, yeah, you need to hear this message. And actually, they are now part of Lifeonaire as well. And just because we shared that with them and was able to kind of change their mindset as well.
That's amazing. Well, I am so grateful to know you guys. I think it's awesome what you've done. You really are a shining light and an example for others who, regardless of what level they're down that path, right, of the wrong path, that's not going to give them the life they want. And that's not there's no such thing as an absolute wrong path, but there's a path for each individual person that is not in alignment with their vision. And when you're off that path, that's not the right path for you. And you guys course corrected. You took the hard actions. You made things. You made it happen. You took me, like you said, you made the hard decisions, and it's just been awesome to witness.
The two of you had a huge role in that. So give yourself a round of applause for that too. Thank you.
Thank you for getting our life back.
Well, thank you for being on the Lifeonaire Show, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, here we go. Dude, that was an awesome episode. I know I say that about every episode, but Steve and Laura are fantastic. I love they made some hard changes. Now, you were in that room. So to give you, the listener, some context, like I was a coach helping Steve and Laura. Peter, at that point, you were a student in the group as well, and you're helping them as well. Ken Holmes was in there. And it was just, initially there was really a little bit, I wouldn't say denial, like that's not the right word, because they knew they had a challenge and they knew they didn't have the life they wanted, but they kind of it was overwhelming to think about how long they'd been on that journey and all the work they put in. And gosh, how do we unwind this? It's like, they started off, feeding a garter snake, and all of a sudden it turned into like a anaconda, like that. Now you have to feed an incredible amount of food to, and they were spending so much of their life and their money and all these things kind of maintaining this. And it just wasn't producing the desired result they were hoping for.
Right. If you really think about it, one of the recurring phrases for Laura was like, we did this all for nothing, because when the room started challenging them on their life. And I think, here's the thing. They had a dream that they were going after, right? And if you think about it, that dream hasn't really changed. It's just the paths to get to that dream has changed. And a lot of times when people come in, in their case, they had the path that was put on in front of them, the plan to go and get to that, financial freedom. But in turn, it actually cost them their life. Yeah. And when I was talking to them about, making those hard decisions, the pain, the impact that this pain had on her. I remember seeing Laura in the room. She was so freaking stressed out. There was no life for both of them. And when you finally start looking at the pain, it's okay, so I have to make this hard decision. It's a different way. Now we're trusting the process, right? We say that in the room all the time, and choosing those different paths, it starts to get, simpler, maybe a little bit easier as you're going around it, because you see, the tunnel, the end of the light at the end of the tunnel, you see it more often.
Well, and, I think what you said is really important, man, because you have this dream of what you think it's going to be like. And I think you have to have the awareness and the humility to realize, okay, this isn't working. I need to change paths. Like, I think a lot of times, we're taught, don't give up. You're a quitter, and just keep pushing through. And especially, I believe that sometimes you think, you think of a bubble, right? And say you're inside that bubble, and you think that if you push hard enough, maybe you're not getting where you want to be, but eventually that bubble will break and you'll break through. And in the case of 100 properties, like somehow we have the mistaken belief that eventually everything will kind of it'll get better, right? Like you're going through a rough spot, you're going through a valley, but it's going to get better. But it doesn't. You keep going, and you keep going. It's just not getting better. And at some point, you got to turn around and realize I got to course correct here. How many times? I can't tell you how many times I've heard from like a rehabber, for instance, someone who fixes and flips homes. Oh man, if I just did one more rehab a year, I'd be good. If I just made another 20 grand a year, listen, it's not that you're lying to yourself, or you just don't know any better, which is not, I'm not going to say it's your fault, because it's not like no one teaches this stuff except us. But what you can accomplish when you really do some of the things and the principles and strategies that we share it's just awesome. But quite frankly, other people have heard these things too, man, and they haven't had anywhere near the results Steve and Laura, because they haven't made the hard decisions. Like you just alluded to, they didn't put it into place. We've had over 10,000 people come to our Get a Life Getaway that Steve and Laura mentioned. And, a lot of them have an incredible life change because they take action, but some of them don't, because they just go back to the old way of belief and of doing things.
Right. I mean, it takes something. I'm thinking about one of the things that they talk about in this episode is selling their dream home, right?
Yeah.
And now, so a lot of people have a hard time with doing that for the time being, for temporarily time being, right? You're selling the dream home. Now that you've sold the dream home, you have all this money. A lot of people, it's hard for them to go, okay, let's take all that money that we just did and pay off to the credit card debt.
Yeah.
Right? 280,000, I think they said, right? Paying that
280 something, yeah.
Something like that, right? And putting that towards the credit card debt. That's tough decisions. But when you start doing it and you start feeling this relief, start seeing this peace in you and your husband and your wife, I want you guys to really, as you're listening to it, consider that, because guess what? I was on that path too. Back in the day, it cost me a lot more, right?
Yeah.
And when you start looking from that perspective, and everybody thinks like, well, I'm different, or my story's different.
I know.
And that's when it can cost you actually that kind of a thinking.
Well, as you're talking, two things struck me. Number one, it looks like you are going backwards by, for instance, or it looks like a loss by like selling your dream home, for instance. But actually it's like a slingshot where maybe it looks like on the surface a step back, but it's going to catapult you forward. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, and so it's really not, I mean, I remember when Steve Cook started selling things off, when he first got this idea for Lifeonaire and started Simplify His Life, people looked at him like they thought he was nuts, like he was insane, like he's losing his business, he's going bankrupt, he's going under. Well, no, because it was different from what other people were doing, but in fact, it was giving him the freedom that he wanted. The other thing I heard from this episode too, from what you just mentioned, is like, hey, yeah, you can have your dream home or you can have your dream life. Which one do you want, right? And so I love this episode. Love Steve and Laura. They're awesome. I'm blessed, as I know you feel like you are too, to get to know them and be friends with them. Listen, I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we have. If you have, please leave us a review, leave us a rating, subscribe to the channel if you want to be part of the Lifeonaire conversation, which, by the way, Steve and Laura over there in the Lifeonaire app. Go ahead and download it to your Android or iPhone device, or you can check it out on the desktop by going over to lifeonaire.com. And until next time, just take a lesson from this, run with it, because we are here to help you, make more, work less, and live better. See you next time, everyone.